I'm very excited to announce that we have a new black and white film on the market. It's from Ferrania. It's called Orto, which is orthochromatic. And it's an absolutely brilliant, beautiful film. And I'm going to give you my review, or at least initial review here, of what I think about the film. Okay, so first off, Ferrania has two films on the market right now. You've got P30, which I did an extensive review here on the Digital Revolution. I'll put a link in the description below. And now you've got Orto, which is an orthochromatic film. So what are the similarities and differences between these two films? Well, first off, they're both incredibly silver rich. They both have a very classic cinema feel to them. They both are very high contrast. They both have very fine grain. And the biggest difference really is just the spectral sensitivity. If you remember my review that I did on P30, you can see here in this example photo that I'm showing of my wife Eve, I said that the film has a little bit of an orthochromatic feel, especially in the skin tones. I could see that. Well, Ferrania now has brought out Orto, which is a box speed of 50 film that is a true orthochromatic film. Now, if you're not familiar with orthochromatic material, orthochromatic is, think silent era type films. Orthochromatic films were sensitive to blue and violet end of the visible spectrum, but really insensitive to the red-yellow end of the spectrum, which means that reds and yellows would reproduce as shades of black, and blues would reproduce as white. So Ferrania asked me if I would go through and help them with some of their best practices / developer times. So I went through and chose a handful of my favorite developers and tested the film on a really difficult scene. And that's what I'm going to be showcasing here today. So the first developer that I used was HC110 Dilution G. And this is a stand development. I really like stand development with Ferrania films. It tames the contrast to where it really hits perfectly my scanner and how I like the film to look. Now, everything that I scanned was scanned on an Imicon 646. So the first image here is HC110 Dilution G for 45 minutes. 45 minutes gave me a wonderful true box speed of 50. And if you look at the image, it's a real wow. Everything was metered with a Pentax digital spot meter. So you can see zone 3 was metered underneath the organ there and just above the bench. Zone 5, I have a gray card on the organ itself. And that bright highlight on the shade is a zone 10. You know, darn close to a linear scan, maybe a slight inverted S-curve to pull the highlight down. The one thing that I found is really interesting is this film has a really long straight line portion, and values that really should be really pushing out on a very difficult white to be able to hold were very easy to hold. So the highlights on this film, especially with the developers that I chose, were absolutely just glorious. The next one I want to look at was HC110 Dilution G, but this was processed for 30 minutes as a stand, and all I was able to get out of it was an exposure index of 32. Really great shadows, really great highlights. So if you wanted to work with HC110 Dilution G and this particular film, and you wanted for one reason or another to use a slower or lower exposure indexes, say something like 6, 12, 25, 32, and you were going to use HC110 Dilution G, I would probably go 30 minutes. The next developer I chose was 510 Pyro. Now, I mixed my own 510 Pyro in studio. Absolutely wonderful developer. It stains really nicely on this film. And I got a really nice 50, a really nice box speed. It had the best overexposure latitude of all the developers tested. I literally could shoot this film at an exposure index of 6, 12, 25, 32, 50, and do it all in 510 Pyro, and they all would be very usable for scanning. Now, I use 510 Pyro at 1 to 500 stand. With 510 Pyro is just an amazing combination. The next developer I tested was Rodinal 1 to 50. This is a real classic combination for me. And what's interesting is I got a really nice box speed of 50. I found that almost all of the developer times for P30 are pretty much the same as they are for the Orto. My cat, Pretty Princess, decided to jump into this frame, and it's just amazing when I look at the texture in her fur and out the window and the deep shadows down here in 3. Everything is just spot on. The next developer that we're going to look at is Diafine. I have to always test my films in Diafine, and this was done in 3 minutes in A and 3 minutes in B, and I actually got a whisker of a speed boost. This was at an exposure index of 64, and I think Diafine would also be used very usable at an exposure index of 80 on this particular film. So you do get a third, 2/3 stop boost if you're looking for it. The grain is very, very, very nice. And it just has that real classic Diafine quality. And then the last developer that I looked at was DDX. Now, this one was truly fantastic. This was DDX 1 to 5. And just an absolutely beautiful combination. The grain, the speed, the smoothness, the luminosity, everything about this is just really, really beautiful. So let's zoom in a little bit here. Let's go back to the very first one. So here's the HC110 Dilution G. And let's just zoom in, to maybe 67% and take a look at the grain. It's really nice. I'm panning across the frame here. It's really nice. It's really smooth. It's really luminous. And it's very classic. You can really feel that orthochromatic quality here. So what I'm going to do really quickly, as in a picture within a picture, I'm going to pop the original scene. So you're able to see how the orthochromatic nature of this film is translating the color palette of the actual scene. So that's going to pop in right now, and I'll leave that up for all of the rest of the shots. So now let's move to the next image. And this is at, let me see, this one's, I didn't scan quite as high of resolution. So this is actually at 100% right here. Once again, really beautiful. This is HC110 Dilution G for 30 minutes. I love every single thing about it. It has just a really beautiful feeling. The texture in the wall, these walls are plaster, is just really, really pretty. The next one is 510 Pyro. 510 Pyro is really, once again, a great choice with this particular film. And if I come in to say 67%, 66%, look at how beautiful the grain structure still is. It has just that classic feel, beautiful shadows down here at that zone 3. Highlights are really well controlled. And once again, folks, this is 35 millimeter. In the next film here, this is Rodinal. Rodinal is shockingly good. Look at how fine the grain and how sharp it is at 1 to 50. Rodinal is wonderful, of course, with low-speed films, especially for really high silver content. The most important thing to remember if you use Rodinal is do not have your developer temp go over 68. Heat causes grain to grow, and be very gentle with your agitation. Diafine. Look at Diafine at 67%. Actually, it's 84%. Let me scroll back to 67% here on Diafine. It's really good. If you're looking to get a little more speed out of this film, I absolutely would encourage you to look at Diafine. You can get an extra third or 2/3 of a stop out of this film, no problem. And still have wonderful control on the highlights. I mean, it's just really, really beautiful. Again, this is the DDX. DDX was a really great choice. This is at 100% right now. Unfortunately, my cat moved a little tiny bit. The exposure was a little bit slow in terms of the shutter speed. So everything that I photographed here was done with a Leica M3, and this is a 50 millimeter collapsible f2 Summicron from the 50s. A really, once again, classic rendering lens, and it's just really beautiful. Everything feels the way it should, the tonality, the gradation. I love everything about this. So in conclusion, how do I feel about this film? I love this film for the same reason that I love P30. It has a unique feeling that I don't see in other film stocks being made. And I, for one, really like that unique cinema-rich, silver-rich tonality. If you like P30, you're going to really like the Orto 50. And again, if you've got a particular developer that you've already dialed in for P30, I would use that same time, at least as a start for the Orto going forward. The times are very similar. The biggest difference is the spectral sensitivity. All right, so my final thoughts on this film developer combinations. What's my favorite? I really love the DDX. I love, love, love the DDX. The 510 Pyro and Rodinal. Those would be my first three choices. Rodinal if I want that bite and that big mid-tone of gray. DDX if I just want that sweeping tonality with really fine grain. And 510 Pyro if I need that overexposure protection. But all of them are a winning solution.